enlisted in the U.S. Army on September 21, 1995. Immediately upon taking the oath, she left New Jersey to complete 4 months of basic training in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. After successfully completing training, she remained in Fort Jackson to continue her advanced individual training as a finance and accounting specialist. After graduation, she was assigned to her first duty station, 4th Finance Battalion at Fort Carson, Colorado. While stationed there, she was assigned as a data entry specialist and shortly after moved into debt management. During her 2 years of assignment, she participated in several field training exercises. In 1998, she received orders to relocate to Korea to serve 1 year of overseas duty assignment. Upon arriving, she was assigned to the 178th Finance Battalion at Camp Henry. She spent the year in processing new service members, ensuring their entitlements and benefits were active and up to date. She also trained and worked alongside the Korean military soldiers' katusas. At the end of the duty, she was given the opportunity to extend her time in Korea to complete her primary leadership development course in Camp Jackson. This was a 4-week course developed to train soldiers in the fundamentals of leadership. In 1999, she relocated to Fort Belvoir, Virginia, to complete her final duty assignment with the Defense Military Pay Office. The assignment was unique that you could be assigned to any of the satellite offices within the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. Within 2 months of arriving, she was promoted to Sergeant E5. 6 months after, she was sent to Fort Buchanan, Puerto Rico on a 2-month temporary duty assignment to assist the small satellite office with processing travel vouchers. Shortly upon returning, she was assigned to work at the Pentagon, headquarters of the United States Department of Defense in Arlington, Virginia. She was part of the team selected to work on all the high-visibility, high-ranking pay accounts to process any military-related entitlements and travel pay vouchers. Approximately a year later, 1 month before September 11, 2001, attack on the Pentagon, she relocated back to Fort Belvoir, Virginia to complete her tour. She ended her time with the Army in June 2002 and relocated to Fayetteville, North Carolina, where she raised her 2 children. In October 2016, she and her husband moved to Oviedo, Florida, for her husband to complete his final Army assignment as an ROTC instructor at the University of Central Florida. She was hired as an ESOL paraprofessional at Millwee Middle School. During the summer, she worked the front desk and shortly after was hired as the bookkeeper. In 2020, she was selected as Millwee's Employee of the Year. She's always had a passion for working with numbers and for career growth opportunities. In January 2023, she accepted a position with Federal Projects Resource Development as a specialist working with ESSER funds. She's truly appreciative of the opportunities and blessings given to her while working with Seminole County Public Schools. Since her husband retired from the Army and is working as a government contractor, they bought a home in DeLand and are making Florida their permanent home.
Good evening, school board members and Mrs. Beeman. It is with great excitement that I introduce to you the newest assistant principal at Teague Middle School, Mary Jo Zarcone. Ms. Zarcone has worked for Seminole County Public Schools since 2012. She has served as an English language arts teacher, behavioral interventionist, dean, and instructional coach at Millwee Middle School, and as a school administration manager at Lake Brantley High School. She's earned a bachelor's degree from the University of Central Florida and a master's degree from the American College of Education. Joining her this evening is her mother, Susan Zarcone, her father, Anthony Zarcone, her fiance, Justin Knight, and the principal of Teague Middle School, Dr. Connie Collins.
Okay, next up, Superintendent, do you have a recommendation regarding student discipline?
Well, and actually, we are headed to the focus on student achievement.
Okay,
And
sorry.
the team has joined us down here.
I'm
We're
sorry, of
talking
course.
about a mathematics achievement and intervention update.
Perfect, thank
Okay.
you.
Good evening, Chair Kraus, board members, Superintendent Beeman. This evening, we're going to give you an update, both programmatically and from a data perspective on where we're at with K-12 math. And you'll remember that more than a year ago when we rolled out an updated math progression, there was a lot of interest in some of the changes that were being made and how we would support students and families through that transition. And we committed to you that we would bring updates back periodically. So we're going to provide those this evening. And of course, I'll do the overview, and then I'll turn it over to Mr. Jensen, our Director of Teaching and Learning, and Mrs. Spradling, our K through 12 Coordinator for Math and Science. And just a reminder, board members, a lot of this work started in January 2019 when the governor issued an executive order to review the Florida standards and make recommendations, and that ended up turning into a full standards remake into the best standards. And of course, with new standards came new assessments and new instructional materials. So we're really right on schedule with that entire state plan. Internally, I think the major structural change from a central office perspective is that in the summer of 2021, when we had a personnel change at the coordinator level, Mr. Jensen and I met with Ms. Beeman and said we felt like we needed to reorganize the Department of Teaching and Learning a little bit and really make sure that we had specialized leadership in math and science. And so Dr. Pisani, who at the time was our elementary coordinator for all subjects, moved to K through 12 English Language Arts and Social Studies, and then we were able to advertise for and ultimately bring Mrs. Spradling in as an experienced math teacher to lead our math and science efforts. And really since then, all of our disciplines have focused on what that K through 12 vertical pathway really looks like. And so just as a reminder, when we did this presentation probably 15 months ago, we rolled out this updated placemat showing what the K through 12 math progression in Seminole County would look like. And again, you'll recall that at K through 3, all students have the same math experience, and then we start differentiating opportunities for students based on aptitude and interest and family goals as well as it relates to mathematics. And again, as you can see, there's lots of arrows moving around demonstrating our commitment for students not to be locked into any particular pipeline, but really to be able to kind of move around as their interests change. And ultimately, of course, in the most accelerated pathway, students can get not only to Calc BC, but well beyond into dual enrollment and very advanced math courses. So this was the placemat again for 22-23. At the end, we're going to talk about a couple of adjustments. But just a reminder that probably the most significant change was the sunsetting of what we used to call primes and gems, and a replacement, not only replacement for branding purposes, but really for program purposes with rigorous accelerated mathematics pathway, or RAMP. And so again, as early as grades 4, we begin accelerating groups of students, and that acceleration then continues for students who want to stay on that pathway. Ultimately, again, one goal would be 7th grade enrollment in Algebra 1 for students who and parents who want a very, very accelerated experience 2 years ahead at that point. But again, on and off ramps throughout the process so that we can adjust not only based on student needs, but also, we know that college and career goals evolve. So again, this is kind of the major change. Just to give you an idea of enrollment in RAMP this year, as you can see, we have nearly 1/3 of 4th graders sitting in an accelerated section learning all of 4th grade and part of 5th grade. So that's going to be our core group that we're going to watch really over the next 5 to 6 years to see how things turned out for them, because they're getting the full experience of new standards, new materials, and again, a little bit of a different approach to how to structure accelerated math. Our ramp 5th graders, again, we have about 30% of 5th graders who are fully learning just the 6th grade math standards, and they will take the 6th grade assessment this year. That's the major change. They're accelerated a full year on that assessment. And again, we're going to share some data in a few minutes. Then you can see we have about 16% of 6th graders who are in the 7th accelerated class, which is essentially pre-algebra. And then we drop down to about 10% of 7th graders currently in Algebra 1 honors. And remember, those students they experience the Primes and Gems pathway to Algebra 1 in 7th grade. So one of the things we'll be looking at is whether the percentage of 7th graders in Algebra 1 honors increases 3 or 4 years from now, when students have fully benefited from the ramp pathway. But notably, 64% of our 8th graders are either in Algebra 1 honors or Geometry honors. So the fact remains that the majority of our students at this point are participating in and benefiting from accelerated mathematics. And again, this gives us some benchmark numbers to compare against as we move forward over the next several years. I'm going to turn things over to Ms. Bradley. Mr. Jensen, sorry. Go ahead.
Absolutely. So to kind of contrast those really promising statistics we have internally with our mathematics acceleration, I'm sure as you've read and watched the news over the last 2 years, you've seen a lot of headlines like we have on this slide, right? How the pandemic really has had a significant impact on learning across the board, but that learning loss has manifested the most in mathematics, and we're seeing it come out of all school districts nationwide, and all newspapers and TV news programs as well. And when you see those headlines, they're primarily referring to this data set, the NAEP. This is often referred to as the nation's report card. It's a kind of series of government-mandated assessments that are used to kind of benchmark how we're doing academically in the country. And you can see that as a result of the pandemic, there's been a significant decrease in nationwide mathematics achievement. We've had a small decrease in ELA achievement as well. I believe that's 2 or 3 points on the same assessment. There's a lot of different hypotheses as to why there's an outsized effect on math, and they're currently doing studies and investigating it. One small one that resonates with me quite a bit is just when we think about how students interact with reading and versus mathematics at home. I think students are much more likely to read at home with their parents consistently than they are to do extemporaneous mathematics at home with their parents. And so a lot of experts attribute this decline in math to kind of the at-home practice that some students missed during the pandemic. And to show the Florida-specific version of that chart, this is our FSA data as a state from 2017 through 2022. And again, you can see from 2018-19 to 2020 and 2021, that 11% decline in mathematics performance. Ms. Bradling will share some of the Seminole specific data with you in a few minutes, but Seminole experienced a decline as well, but on all measures, both before and after the pandemic, we are significantly outperforming the state. And so with that, to kind of share what we're doing as a district to address learning loss as a result of the pandemic, and kind of what we're doing as a system in an ongoing way to empower students and teachers in mathematics and really improve our mathematics achievement. Ms. Bradling will walk you through our district approach to curriculum and intervention.
Thank you. So our SCPS approach to math right now is a combination of curriculum, both core curriculum that you would see in every classroom, plus some district-selected supplemental programs that we've purchased, as well as intervention programs to meet students' unique needs. And really through a combination of these, that's how we're addressing both the acceleration to get students on grade level, but also to meet those needs. And you saw that shocking NAEP data that showed just how far the nationwide issue is with mathematics. So I wanted to kind of give an update, some data, give some updates on what programs are in place and how we're using them and how they're looking so far, basically. So first, this time last year in the spring, the board adopted instructional materials for math. So here on the screen, you just see what are courses from K-5 all the way through Algebra 2 Honors, which would capture the majority of our students. What instructional materials they're using. These are complete programs that are for core instruction, and also they're going to embed some pieces too to individualize instruction for students' needs. But this is what you would see in any classroom that you would visit in SCPS in a mathematics classroom. So iReady is one of those district selected resources for our K-5 students, and then it's used more at the intervention level for 6-8. But here you can see this year's data, 22-23, of where our students were at Diagnostic 1, which is in August, and then Diagnostic 2, which was just this past January. And iReady likes to divide up the data of students who are above grade level, on early grade level, and then 1, 2, or 3 or more years behind level. So you can see at the beginning of the year to now, we've about doubled how many students are on grade level, which is excellent. And also that those numbers of students, the percentage of students who are 2 or more grade levels below has also decreased. And so really, trying to also focus on that yellow section, students that are 1 year behind and getting them up, accelerating them to the grade level. So here's what you would see. And of course, this is just mid-year. So we would anticipate that these, that the scores would look much better after students have had the second half year of instruction in their classes. In addition to iReady, we as a district have purchased Dreambox Learning, which I know you've had some experience, you've been familiarized with a little bit. Dreambox, like iReady, is also an adaptive program, but it's a little bit different in that it's students interact through it through like game-like activities. They're called virtual manipulatives, and as the students interact with it, Dreambox adapts. So as a student gets an answer right or wrong, or uses a correct strategy, or maybe an inefficient strategy or an incorrect strategy, Dreambox adapts from there. Students are interacting with those activities, but teachers also have the option to select which activities the students do. So Dreambox can kind of prescribe what, based off the data, they see students' needs are, but a teacher can also influence that. So you can have a little bit of both. You can have these gaps that students bring from years prior to entering your classroom, but you can also address the gaps that you're noticing in your day-to-day instruction as well. So it kind of hits twofold. And then teachers are able to see regular data reports that show where their kids are growing. So, and on the screen you see that top image is an example of a student's dashboard, and you can see that this student has 6 options of lessons that they can interact with, and again, each of these would be like a game manipulative type thing. On the bottom, that's an example of a time lesson from the primary platform. So you can see that it's not so much a prescribed lesson, it's more of an interactive tool. So how are we doing on Dreambox? This data is from through February, so just as of last week. And what this graph is showing that based on the number of lessons, average lesson students are participating each week or completing each week, this is how many years of growth they're showing on average. So we can interpret that as a Dreambox really recommends at least 5 lessons per week completed. And for students who are hitting that goal on average, they're showing over 2 years of growth. And even our students who are not quite hitting that 5 lesson goal, they're still showing over a year's worth of growth. And this, of course, can be very substantial when you've got students entering classrooms that are now 3-4 years behind. A teacher doesn't always have time to do all that, right? Like can really address that. And then in small group instruction or in class instruction, they can be really filling those gaps as well. So it's like a twofold approach to meeting kids' needs. Another intervention program we have adopted in this district is called Seminole Numeracy Project, and it is for our students who show the very foundational gaps. If you think of it like early literacy, this is early numeracy. So even basically down to counting principles about numeracy. And that's the purpose of this program. So we're using it with our Tier 3 intervention currently in K through Algebra 1. And it's used internationally. The program actually comes from New Zealand, and a lot of districts and states in the U.S. have adapted it for the U.S. because, again, it's kind of agnostic of all the standards. It's more about early numeracy, so it can be used, in any classroom. Teachers typically use it through, it's a combination of one-on-one and small group. So if we're talking about students with really early numeracy gaps, it's very teacher directed, and that's exactly what we want. We want a teacher working with those students really one-on-one and in very small groups. Okay, so finally let's look at kind of, let's bring it now more globally to our FAST data, so for our core instruction, and kind of see some data of how that's going. So on this slide, you're gonna see a comparison of PM1 and PM2 compared to the state's PM2 average. And on the screen, you can see grades 3, 4, 5, and then our ramp 5. And the reason that ramp 5 is separated is because, as Dr. Weissong mentioned, those students are taking 6th grade math, and so they're taking a 6th grade FAST assessment, so those would not be included in our 5th grade counts. So across the board in grades 3, 4, and ramp 5, our PM2 data is exceeding the state's averages. And in there, the red would translate as a level 1, the orangish color would be level 2, green is level 3, so what we typically think of proficient, and then blue is level 4, and purple is level 5. And these are based off of the state's FSA scales from last year. And again, the reason that we are lagging a little bit behind in 5th grade is because 30% of those students have now been placed into a ramp 5 course, and so they're not included in this count. So even if as we think of our ramp 5 students who are taking 6th grade math, even this, if you look from PM1 to PM2, even that growth is pretty remarkable, especially if we consider those kids are now taking a grade level up from what they would typically.
I think it's also important to remember that this is data from January assessing end of year standards. So this is where are we at with three more full months of instruction to go before those end of year standards are assessed. So as long as we're seeing progress between 1 and 2, you expect to see that same momentum through PM3 in May.
So on the next slide, you'll see the similar data, but for our middle school courses. So in 6th grade, again, exceeding. Keep in mind this excludes the 16% that are, it gets real confusing with math sometimes. It excludes the 16% who are taking pre-algebra, which is a 7th grade FAST assessment that they would be taking. So this is that other 84% that would be taking 6th grade FAST. The 7th grade data also exceeding. This excludes our 7th graders taking Algebra 1. So it gets a little, in 8th grade, of course, again, as Dr. Weissong mentioned, 64% of our students in 8th grade are taking a high school level math class. So this would be the students that are not enrolled in one of those high school math classes. Those are the ones who would take a grade 8 FAST. But still growth across the board. And as Dr. Weissong said, this is growth only from August to January. So we would anticipate more improvements as well. Just to kind of wrap back to ramp, this graph is going to show the average scale score from PM1 in that orange dot to PM2 in the blue dot. That dashed vertical line indicates a low 3, like what we would think is the cutoff scale score for a level 3, again based off of previous FSA scales. But you can see that our students not only are performing well, but they're still growing, which is even like better in a lot of ways, because not only these students are proficient, but they're proficient and they're getting even better. So you can see, we had, if you look at ramp 5, we actually were below that threshold and now are above. So kudos to all of our teachers, and especially ramp 5. Yeah. And then that table at the top just gives the numbers that match up with those points on the graph. And that's the average scale score. So I am going to pass back to Mr. Jensen to kind of talk about next steps for where we're headed from here.
So going forward, we're obviously going to continue to closely monitor our data and make instructional adjustments at the teacher and the school district level based on what we're seeing, what programs we're using. We're engaging in analysis and evaluation efforts with these different approaches to mathematics intervention to ensure that our students and teachers are getting the best bang for their buck. We're always soliciting feedback as well on our core instructional materials and our instructional frameworks that we provide teachers with those Tier 1 materials. So every teacher in Seminole County can click a button next to any lesson in their instructional frameworks and send us feedback on what worked in the lesson, what didn't work in the lesson, other resources that they would suggest for that lesson. And Ms. Bradling and her team receive those instantly and review them daily. And so we're constantly revising our instructional frameworks based on our teachers' feedback, which is something that we're really happy with and something we'll continue into the future. We're also going to continue training our teachers, both with a number of after-school PD opportunities Ms. Bradling has offered, as well as our summer best summer ever offering. And we'll be doing a lot of mathematics focus and instruction during that as well for our math teachers. Another thing we've been doing is we're gearing up for next year already is revising our K through 12 math progression. And so this is a sample version of that document. And in looking at it, you might notice that it looks very, very similar to last year's math progression, and that's because it is. There are really two changes that are, nothing as major as changing our accelerated math sequence like we did last year, adding those new high school math courses. This year, the two big changes to it are, one, changing the title. One's just a semantic title, which is revising the title of, we called it previously 7th Accelerated Math for 6th graders. And our parents and teachers let us know that was a mouthful. And so we have changed that to Ramp 6 to make it more concise and easier on our families and students. And so that 6th grade ramp course is now just Ramp 6. And with the addition of a new course from AP Pre-Calculus, we have added that into our math pathway as well.
I want to just close on a couple of anecdotes. First of all, the three of us have really prioritized visiting ramp classrooms this year. We were at another school this morning, and as the elementary principals and assistant superintendents will tell you, that's our number one request, is to go and spend time in the ramp classrooms, because we've wanted to see for ourselves what additional supports teachers and students will need. And board members, you'll remember we got some good parent questions at the beginning of the year, particularly as elementary school families adjusted to middle school grading expectations a year early. And a lot of that settled after first quarter, and really very few families exercised an off-ramp after first quarter and or at semester. Our numbers are pretty stable, so we've been excited about that. And the visits have reaffirmed that we have very hardworking students in this district and incredibly talented teachers in this program. They're doing phenomenally. Our biggest success story is we have one elementary school where the principal made the decision to put all level 3 through 5 students into ramp. So everyone who was proficient on last year's FSA, all were scheduled into ramp. And when the first PM1 data came out, that school lagged a little bit because they had so many more students in ramp and more kind of skills gaps to work with. And by PM2, not only was that school our highest growth school, but the school and its teachers and students had closed really the gap between them and schools that chose to only put level 4s and 5s into ramp. So we're learning a lot by watching how that school is working, and the strategies, both communication and instruction, that the principal and the teachers there have put into place. So it's impressive and something that we've been sharing with other principals. I will also share that the feedback being provided from teachers has been significant. In some cases, we're making daily adjustments to the instructional frameworks based on their comments. In other cases, we're compiling lists of adjustments that we want to make over the summer to roll out next year's framework. We're also sharing that feedback with the textbook publishers. In the case of Math Nation, they'll be here in Seminole County next month with us to meet with some teachers and also to walk classrooms with us and to take that feedback, because that's a consumable resource that can be updated year to year versus a more traditional text where you have to wait 5 years to get the update. So we're excited that publisher is taking the feedback. Finally, we were in classrooms again this morning and got to watch several students working on Dreambox, and the feedback is very positive, and we're likely going to study that product a little more carefully next year as part of our program evaluation efforts related to the ESSER grant and deciding long-term what we're going to keep in Seminole County and what we may need to part with. So we'll be studying that. And I want to thank the assistant superintendents who have been doing their mid-year visits with principals, and in many cases going student by student to both adjust learning pathways in iReady and adjust minutes and plans for all of these intervention programs. Those visits are incredibly important, both for affirming where our schools are at, but also, again, for making the adjustments that are going to matter between now and May. So thank you, Chairman and Superintendent, for the time.
Excellent presentation and update. Thank you so much. I'll start with Vice Chair Sanchez. Sorry.
First of all, thank you very much. I have mixed emotions, to be honest, about RAMP. And looking at the data from Progress Monitoring 1 to Progress Monitoring 2, I'm curious to know when PM3 is, especially with ESSER funds in the summer program coming up, and seeing that gap and knowing that we need to prioritize, I don't know how to say this. When I was in the 5th grade teaching math and seeing the Primes kids compared to my regular math class, there was a huge gap with the students missing certain skills because maybe they did score well on FSA at that point, so they jumped up to Prime. And I feel that score or that gap is because they missed some vital instructional material that has caused that gap. What are we going to do to close that gap that they have missed? So, for example, we would have the Primes teacher would finish their lessons early, and then they would, right before FSA, do like a crash course on any of the skills that they thought their students were behind. So how do we prioritize that gap where apparently that's where there's some sort of mathematical intervention that needs to be addressed, but what are we doing to close that? And how, because that's where my concern is I see that and I get concerned because my kids didn't have that gap. But when we move a kid at a fast pace and then all of a sudden you have them here, they can't get there. And that's my concern. They're missing some basic knowledge.
I think there's a few things to that. I think one was that it was important when we created RAMP that there was that on and off ramp option so that students could, and a temporary off ramp, right? If a student is in 4th grade RAMP and then needs to exit rest area for a little while and can rejoin the pathway in middle school, they can get right back on that path. I think another piece to it is that our new benchmarks, our new best standards are incredibly well vertically aligned. So a lot of times, and this is why we were able to make RAMP Force the way it is a lot of times there is a 1-to-1 benchmark in 4th and 5th grade. So, and the expectation is just a little bit more increased, like maybe it's within 10,000 instead of 1,000. And so teachers through small group instruction and through these intervention programs can accelerate kids and say, okay, they missed this gap within 1,000, but I can pick them up within 10,000 addressing the conceptual errors and just increasing maybe just the numbers, right? The magnitude of the numbers. So I think it is definitely still a twofold approach between the intervention programs and then also targeted differentiated instruction through small groups or whole group instruction.
So I know in the PowerPoint it says that parents can decide on taking their children off and on the ramp. Can teachers do the same thing? Because it didn't say that.
It's a collaborative decision.
So if a teacher decides that the child has some deficiency in a certain skill, they can communicate with the parent saying that we're going to take off the ramp right now. We're going to go back and get down to the basics on that skill.
Yes.
Okay. And do they have to have the parent permission for that?
Are we talking about a mid-year change
Yeah.
or a?
Oh,
I mean,
on and off ramp.
Right, I mean, ideally there's collaborative discussion, right, between the administrator, the teacher, the family, and maybe some others, depending on what they're seeing in the data. Again, as we've gotten deeper into the school year, anecdotally, the principals are sharing there are fewer requests. Teachers have adjusted,
Okay.
students have adjusted, and things are moving along. I think the other key difference is really thinking about that 5th grade ramp, and when you compare that to where we were, let's say 3 years ago with primes, where you have teachers teaching out of 2 different books and having to blend a lot of standards that maybe weren't as well
Well, that's the Go Mouse series, so
put
I
together.
could throw that out the
Right.
door.
You've got, so now, we've made it very clear for 5th grade ramp what the focus is, right? It's all in on the 6th grade standards, and so I think I think the message on exactly what the focus is more clear, and frankly, that lets us support teachers better when we've got, when we've got a framework that everyone is following. I will also say, because of the work that went in last year to the instructional materials transition, we are seeing, not just in ramp, but in the other courses as well, pretty high fidelity to the mathematics instructional materials and the framework. And when people just focus on the core materials and then the interventions that have been selected, I think that allows the instruction to focus more. So again, I think we're beginning to see, and we'll see long-term, the benefits of the more structured approach to ramp versus primes.
So along with that line, and the kids taking a year before and, having to still have 4 maths in high school or statistics or whatever they decide to go their route. I know for one of my kids, it was hard for adjusting for SAT and ACT. The testing, when you take algebra, then you have geometry, but you have that gap because you've taken it earlier. And then all of a sudden you're taking your SAT your junior year, and the tutor had to go back and to that algebra that they were missing quite a bit of information that they forgot. And that happens to all of us. If you don't use it, you lose it. How can we help our children with that gap? Because that does affect, when they're preparing for the college courses or getting ready for college with SAT. How do we help with that?
I think we, our high schools implement a lot of, there's PSAT in 9th grade, PSAT in 10th grade. I think there's a lot of continued focus on SAT throughout. And then for our students, who need it for concordance for graduation, they get specific help in 11th grade, those students who did not pass the
Right, and
algebra
I understand the concordance scores and all that stuff. My concern is that they're missing, let's say they took the algebra and they finished it.
grade, yeah.
Yes, and then they're done. And then all of a sudden they're taking the SAT their junior year, and they're missing some information and knowledge that was so, important. How do we make sure that, do we have any summer programs or some intervention programs that can help those students? Because I actually had to pay out of pocket to get my own children caught up. Is there a way we can get those kids those skills that they've forgotten over a period of time? I mean, I don't know if anybody else has anybody that has had that happen to.
I can speak to, our daughters did SAT prep in summer school, and I'm sure that's available online or somewhere.
Yeah, but we pay for that. But what else are we going to do within our system?
So we have a multifaceted approach to this. One, I think, in general, and one of the reasons why we have established this kind of math coordinator position and focused a lot of effort and resources in math in Seminole County is just to raise the universal level of tier 1 instruction across the board, providing students with really high quality materials, which again I'm very thankful to the whole board for kind of authorizing the purchase of all of those materials, and then creating stronger pathways for students with stronger instruction so that when they get to high school they have a stronger math foundation. That's the first step. But then once they get to high school and they do need that refresher, or they do
That's
need
where the foundation
to go
of-
back, we do have a number of those programs are available to high schoolers, and one of the programs that we didn't touch on in the presentation that we also have acquired using ESSER funds is Khan Academy, which has a strong
Right.
SAT, ACT focus, and our math classes in high school are using
And I know the
that
kids
to
use that.
have students get customized reports and do some of that practice building up towards those exams as well.
Have you ever checked the site ineedapencil.com by that Oviedo student? ineedapencil.com. I know I was talking to Superintendent Beeman about it. It's about that child that scored perfect SAT and ACT scores numerous times, was on Good Morning America. But what I like about that site is they don't just tell you you got the answer wrong. It shows you what you missed. And it's free. And it's all one word, ineedapencil.com. It's amazing. It's all over the nation now.
Member
But thank you.
Pinnock, did you have comments?
I
Question?
do. So going back to algebra in 8th grade, can you explain that ramp right there? Because on the graph, it doesn't look like we're automatically putting 8th graders in algebra. It says pre-algebra, but then it says algebra honors as a ramp. And we've gotten parent complaints and concerns about the early algebra placement and how it's affecting the kids' trajectory for having to take those 4 classes in high school, and how it impacts their college readiness or ability to get in. And so I'm just curious of the 8th grade algebra.
Well, first, one of my biggest goals for the math progression, one of our team's biggest goals was for the clarity for parents, because that we felt like maybe wasn't there prior with our prior kind of pathway that we had. So really, our pathways lead to either 7th grade Algebra 1, 8th grade Algebra 1, or 9th grade Algebra 1. And so our students who would enroll in Ramp 4 and stay on that most rigorous pathway, which ends up being that gold color on the bottom, those are the students that end up taking 7th grade Algebra, 8th grade Geometry, and then they still, of course, again, have to have 4 credits in high school. There is the state's typical accelerated pathway begins in 6th grade, and that is by taking 6 accelerated in 6th grade. They learn all of 6th grade and half of 7th grade. And then in 7th grade, they finish 7th grade and learn 8th grade, which is that 7th accelerated course that we've mentioned a few times. So that is to basically do 3 years of middle school into 2 years, a year and a half each, and that leads to 8th grade algebra. And again, that's the state's typical pathway. We just also offer that option for 7th grade algebra for our most rigorous students. Our students who would stay in the traditional pathway of 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade would then take 9th grade algebra. So again, a lot of the purpose of communication like this is for teachers to, for families to understand more about those different options, right? And like when I'm thinking of my own daughters, am I thinking of them as a 7th grade algebra student, an 8th grade algebra student, or a 9th grade algebra student is kind of how I typically think about them.
So more clarity, because I think the perception of parents was it was an automatic placement in algebra in 8th grade, and that's not the case. We're communicating differently. If you want to go the traditional method, it is okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
The core instruction be strong regardless of what course your student enrolls in.
Thank you.
I had 2 quick comments. I don't know. Superintendent and I visited Sterling Park, and I was so impressed because it was a classroom that half the kids were using Dreambox and the other students were engaged with the teacher, and then they switched. And normally when you go into a classroom, especially there were like 11 of us going in, the kids all turn and look. They were so engaged, they didn't even turn around to look at us. So right now I'm a big fan. I'll be curious to see what the feedback turns out. And secondarily, the testing that we're doing, the first period, second period, and then we're looking for the third period. This is on content of the whole year. Am I correct?
Yes.
So it would be unlikely that students would score well the first assessment. Okay.
And
I
that's
just
why
wanted-
that's why the state produces percentile rankings as well, so that students can say, okay, on PM1 I might have been a level 2, but in comparison with my peers, I'm still at a 75th percentile. So, and that's the reason for that the state put that out.
Okay. Member Garrick?
I just wanted to share that I also had the opportunity of attending ramp classes both in elementary and middle school, and the kids were super excited. The teachers were beyond the moon. So I was a big fan from that perspective. Building on Vice Chair Sanchez's comments, I did also have a similar experience with my students, my own children who had been on an advanced path, that when they got to the ACT and SAT, they had to do some review. So if we could just kind of keep our eyes on that. Of course, there were great resources that were free. We were able to make use of Khan Academy, but just kind of to feel out those students and see how they're doing, and if there needs to be a short boot camp or whatever we can do to make sure that we, get them where they need to be, especially those accelerated kids. You certainly don't want them to be penalized on those national tests when, they took the course several years ago. The other thing I want to make sure is that we're communicating to parents whose students are on that most accelerated path, especially if those are students that are going into a math or engineering field, what those options look like in 11th and 12th grade, because even though they only need a couple of years or 4 years to graduate, some of those, I knew students that were taking, Calc AB or Calc BC and STAT at the same time, and they ran out of courses. And then it was, where do we go to stay engaged? And even though they had finished what they needed, especially to be in those rigorous programs, colleges wanted to see if you're on an engineering path, that you are taking math every year and that it's getting significantly more challenging. So just making sure that we're having those conversations with the kids that really love math. So, thanks.
I guess a couple of thoughts there. Certainly, I think we've heard over the years kind of the concerns about, well, if I get on this accelerated path and I have to do Calc BC in the junior year or whatever. And I think the reality is that the suite of courses that are available after Algebra 2 for a student who does not want to go the AP, Calc AB, and BC route, there are multiple options there, including statistics, which is becoming so much more important in so many different, career fields. And then for that student that does push through Calc BC and wants to keep going, that's why we have the dual enrollment articulation agreements at Seminole State and UCF. And certainly rigor of course selection is a key factor in college admissions. And so yes, we talk about, well, you may have taken Algebra 1 in 7th or 8th grade. You also have, again, the fact that you're 16 years old and into, advanced math from a dual enrollment perspective, and that's a big plus. So the other comment I'll share, and I'm certain we'll do a future presentation on this, whether it's at a workshop or a board meeting, but SAT is moving digital, and they're just beginning to roll out what all of that means. Both Mrs. Thompson, Ms. Borowski, Mr. Vasquez have all been at meetings with the College Board and large districts to see what that's going to look like, and how strategies are going to be changing based on a paper versus a computer adaptive test. That will be a reset opportunity for us to address, in high school, how we approach SAT prep, both on the math and the ELA side. So I think we'll have an opportunity sooner rather than later to start talking to counselors and teachers about what all of that is going to mean. And I know Mr. Rice and several of the high school principals are already thinking about that as well.
Yes.
One final thought that had come up earlier is you had mentioned that you're getting feedback about the new textbooks and materials from the teachers because they've all been newly adopted. The textbooks won't have an update for 5 years, but is there some wiggle room to be able to do extra updates as needed if there are things that aren't working? How do you accomplish that?
So typically the feedback we'll take it more as like from our instructional frameworks. So if the textbook, if it can't be adjusted there, we can adjust it in our lesson plans and in our recommendations so that we can tell teachers how to maybe make a small revision or an addition or deletion so that they best align to the best standards.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Sanchez?
Sorry, one more question. I was just looking at the graph. I know with the progress monitoring that I'm sure the next one is what, right after spring break? Is that the next one for the PM3?
PM3 will be in May, and that's the summative assessment.
Okay, so if there's students that need extra support or intervention for ESSER for the summer, how are we getting to that?
So are you specifically speaking about what summer programs we have for next year? So we have a lot of summer programs happening this summer.
Okay,
we
so
have
you are already starting to think about what we need to do for those students that may be dipping
absolutely.
down.
We'll have programs for students, essentially grades K through 11, running in all subject areas almost.
With
And
the ESSER.
we'll even have special summer programs for students who want to enter ramp classes and would like a little additional practice before they enter ramp classes.
Right, and so then also when looking at the regular courses, 9th, 10th, and 11th, are you having just plain geometry, or do we have to have geometry on? Is it honors, or is it just geometry? And then there's also geometry honors, because I was told that there were some schools that there wasn't an option with just regular, that was only honors available. Is that just something that was not correct information that was shared to me? That
Schools do have local control over which courses they offer. I'm not aware of any student or of any school that just offers, at least at the high school level,
Right.
Yes.
just offers geometry honors.
In middle school, the course is geometry honors.
but what about in high school?
Then every instance I've seen, both the standard level and
So
the
we have
honors
standard
level are
and
are
honors.
offered.
So we should, and all high schools have a standard and honors. Mr. Rice, I think you know what person I'm talking about, because we talked about it before. There was a parent that I had you reach out to about the course. And but they're allowed to, there was a regular course for them to take, not an honors.
We have a few courses. For example, probability and statistics honors is only offered at the honors level in the state of Florida. So it is just an honors level course. Same thing this year with pre-calculus honors. There's not a standard option. There's only one course code, and that's for the honors level.
Okay. Thank you guys so much.
Member Davis, did you have any questions? You're okay? Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation and update.
You guys are awesome.
We're up to board items for discussion. And I'd like to ask Ms. Cole-Palmer, did you have something that you needed to get on the calendar first?
Thank you, Chairman Kraus. For this evening, good evening, board members, Ms. Beeman. I am requesting a litigation executive session during the open meeting on April 4th, 2023. This is in regards to pending litigation in the matter of Ross v. Seminole County Public Schools and John Eastern Company, case number 0JCC 18-019673 WWA. I do need guidance regarding next steps in this matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So, Jill, you'll get that scheduled for us? Okay. Okay, again, roll call order tonight. Items for discussion. Member Penick.
Yes, I just want to once again express my disappointment in the censorship by the superintendent and the board chair of our open discussion list for today's meeting. It was very frustrating to get an amended list as we walked into the meeting and not prior notice. We have an obligation to our constituents, to our staff, to our community to address the needs and the issues that are brought to us. And I asked at the last meeting, and I'm going to ask again today, for more board discussion, open discussion work sessions, whether we extend the time frame of the meetings that are already on the calendar or put some additional ones on. But we can no longer let these meetings, the time frame, hold us back from performing the business of this organization.
Okay,
So
thank
that's
you.
all I have.
Member Davis?
With regard to the and if for some reason this list is longer from what I'm told than it normally is, then we might need to just add a workshop. As chair, you determine what's the priority, and I think you tried to do that. Board members, but the method and all of that, it's really that we have a lot of stuff on the agenda. We're going to have to probably try to add another one somewhere
Okay.
in here. And I don't think it's going to be a problem, because some of them are pretty quick, and then some of them are not. We need information,
Understood.
so I'm fine with doing that, and I want to thank all of the board members for agreeing to go to our togetherness meeting. Yeah. And, I'm really happy with our audience, that come here, I stay very. Our board and our superintendent and our.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Member Carrick?
For clarification, at this time for comments, is this regarding any of our school trips and committee reports, or is this not?
This is for any comments, not committee reports. Committee
Okay.
reports are at the end.
Excellent. So non-committee reports, I wanted to share that we had a very busy last couple of weeks since we last saw you. We have been visiting schools, engaged in the community. Some of the many highlights include, let's see, we had a Girls Summit just last week, which I want to give a special shout out to Dr. Cummings, to Ms. Faison. I'm not sure who all the powers to be behind the scenes are. Ms. Mills helped make that happen, and this was a tremendous opportunity for young women in 5th and 6th grade that don't usually have the opportunity to come together and really come up with strategies to help them address difficult choices they're making, and behavior in particular was stressed. So this was a phenomenal resource, and hopefully you can check out some of the pictures online. I was pleased to have a chance to peek into that. We also had the Community Leadership Academy. As you all know, Seminole County is a phenomenal district. We hear, year in and year out how terrible Florida schools are, but we are consistently at the top of our game, both in the state and nationally. So I would really like to encourage each and every one of you to be part of the effort. These are our community schools, our public schools. And so if you can join us at either in the classroom or as a community member, we would love your help. I had the opportunity to be part of the Goldsboro Read Across America / Dr. Seuss's birthday. I was invited to share some stories, so I got a favorite by Dr. Seuss up on its feet, and it was a tremendous day. I also later on perused social media and was able to see that dozens if not hundreds of volunteers were out in the community at elementary schools throughout the county. So I encourage you, if you have 10 minutes, if you have an hour, if you are ready to get all in, we can absolutely put you to work regardless of your strengths, your talents. If you can bake a cake, we can get you into a culinary class. If you can sew, we can get you into some graphic arts class. We would like to put you to work and help you and have you be part of our team. I also went to the Dual Language Festival, which was great fun over at Winter Springs High School. It was phenomenal to see the students competing and passionate about their languages, including American Sign Language. It was also great to see people celebrating their cultures, and a great event. I'll try not to take up the whole list, but there's just so many exciting things going on. This past weekend, I was able to, with Chair Kraus, attend the history fair at Jackson Heights Middle School. Again, some great projects, and in honor of Women's History Month, I'll talk about just a couple. There were two young women who presented on Amelia Earhart and shared the pre-story before she was a pilot. And as a young woman, as a child, she built a roller coaster in her backyard. There were some really exciting things that had inspired these young women to learn more about history. Also in the Wright brothers, we heard that it wasn't just the brothers, that they had a sister, because there's a great woman in the mix always, but there was a sister that was running the company, and after one of the brothers, the first brother passed away, she continued to keep the business running. So that was just lots of great women history, and I will save some more for some other folks. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice Chair Sanchez.
Also, I looking at the list on the workshop, I know that Member Pennick had mentioned this, but I also felt some of my items that were picked, because I wasn't able to pick them for myself because I had to deal with something, have been on my list for over 3 months. And to put wands on my list as a priority when some of these items have been discussed and met with and talked about, and were no preparation for anybody because they've been on my list for quite some time, should have been at the priority of that list. So in the future, I would like, if that ever happens, that we go back and look and see what was on the list in prior time to see, and make that on the top of the priority list, rather than go to an item that was just added to the list at the very end. Because discipline was a critical issue, that it was my concern. So was Plato's Lab. And the fact that, we have kids that are, able to do Plato's Lab and get a credit and a half and beat the system. And, those items should have been prioritized, or somebody could have reached out to me and called me when they knew that I was dealing with something that was unexpected. Also, on a bright note, like Member Garrett said, there were so many amazing events that happened in the past few weeks. Softball kickoff, baseball kickoff with Eastmont. That was a fabulous event. Rock Lake Middle School had opportunity with Superintendent Beeman to see the amazing activities going on in there. And like I said at the open board discussion, to see the students engaged with their teacher and how the English language arts teacher embedded and integrated the mental health lessons in her classroom with poetry, and what the kids shared was unbelievable. And then on Friday I went back and they did talk writing outside, and the kids were taking their poetry and writing it on the ground, and it was just beautiful. Each teacher and faculty member has somebody that they can share or vet to, or somebody that they have opportunity for any kind of concerns that they can meet up with, which I love that. And it was like an elementary school, like Ms. Beeman said, but in middle school. They shared their work. engaged, hands-on, and that's what every classroom should look like. So when we go through classrooms and I see kids sitting in rows or not interacting with their shoulder partner or peers, to me, that is not what teaching's all about. Teaching is hands-on, thinking out of the box, allowing children to engage and communicate with each other. If I see a classroom that's super quiet and nobody talking about the teacher, that to me shows me that that's not what a classroom should look like. And I know teachers are under a lot of stress, believe me, way too much. I know, remember, Garrett, probably Christine will touch on that, 'cause I think it was, you and I were at that one. The Red Ribbon poster contest, amazing. The student from Goldsboro, was it, that won first place?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I forgot her name, but she will have her work on the back window of a Seminole Sheriff's vehicle. Like we have some of the vehicles that have some of the featured work. Her beautiful artwork will also be displayed in Lake Mary Life. And along with that, each winner received a banner that goes to their school, and they the winners, some of them received $125 to Target, and it took a whole village of people that put this event together. So I can't thank our sheriff and everybody else enough for everything that they did. So I appreciate all the work that they did for that event. Superintendent Beeman and I had an opportunity to go to the Essence Festival, which I believe was the first year that we had that event.
I believe so too, yes.
At Lake Brantley, and oh my gosh, we had so much fun. Of course, it had to be the hottest day of the year, but it was a breath of fresh air. Everybody was working together and having a ball in the courtyard, dancing and singing, and all the clubs were there, and it just was amazing. Also had an opportunity that City Commissioner Carrie Wiggins put together a community event, the Velma Williams Event Center, Family Center. But many of us had an opportunity to go to that, and we all were cheerleaders or whatever we were. And look at Cerrita's like, I was a cheerleader. I even went back afterwards at the end. I think Kenny was tired of seeing me there all day, or for 2 days straight. It was Crooms Academy. At Crooms, we had the Sanford playing Markham, and we had Seminole playing Crooms. All the schools were playing basketball. The principals, the administrators, the students. It was one of the best events I've ever been to. And the fact, we had so many wonderful partners that were there helping with it, with the picnic project and the sheriff's department. And everybody, and it takes a village, but the teamwork and to put anybody's differences aside. And that's what a community is all about. And I can't begin to tell you how proud I was to be a part of that. And what Sanford has done is just amazing. It didn't stop there. It continued. And then we had Bethune-Cookman and Young Men of Excellence. And we had that event the following day with Edna Bland and Rebecca Ritchie and the Reader Theater with Rosa Parks. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. And Bethune-Cookman, of course, had already done 2 performances. Still had, it was like 8 o'clock at night at that time, still sang, and then had to go back to do their work. I was blown away with everything that they did. And then we had the Porch Fest. So it was one thing after another, and I will put Winter Park, Florida to Sanford any day and say Sanford is by far #1. So, and I'm talking about Winter Park in Orange County, not Seminole County. But kudos to everybody that was involved in making that event happen, because it really did take a village to make it happen. And Mr. Bentley came up there and shared some beautiful facts about Black history that I didn't know about, and I haven't had any chance to even put it on social media yet, but I was really intrigued with what you had to share. And that really, it was amazing. So thank you. And on that note, you know spring break will be starting soon. I don't have my Zoom meeting until tomorrow. With spring break starting, some of us will be heading to Tallahassee for different events. I'm going with Florida School Board Association as chair of the Central Florida School Board Coalition, representing the 14 districts. And I'm going to say it again. You may not watch the news, but please pay attention to the bills. Please, please, please look and see what House Bill 1 says, Senate Bill 202, and start advocating and speaking up. I have students that are doing it. I need our teachers, our administrators, and everybody to really pay close attention, because we really need your help in making sure that our students get the best education possible and that our teachers get what they need and deserve, as well as our administrators and all of our faculty members. And on the last note, wanted to apologize to the PTA for not being able to go to the Reflections Award ceremony,
We tried.
which we both tried to fly
tried,
there.
but we
We
missed.
tried, but we missed it. So it was from one side of town to the other one. But if anybody wants to reach out to me about anything about heading into Tallahassee next week that they want us to bring up, please do so. On the last note, Glorious Hands, or actually, yes, it's Glorious Hands. They're having a summer camp, and it's called Glow Girl. And so Kamadi's doing, it's life skills, community serving, so they'll do some community serving projects, healthy living, and much, much more for $120, and it's for the week of June 5th through the 9th. It's from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. It is from age 10 to 15, and this summer camp is going to be amazing. So if you have not had a chance to look at some of the summer camps out there, Glow Girl is one of them with glorioushands.org. Check it out. It's called Glow Girl, and it's $120 June 5th to the 9th, all day long. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I have a couple of things left. I was able to attend the foundation hosted the superintendent's breakfast with some of our very valuable business partners, and it was very enlightening to hear areas where they felt we need to concentrate with our CTE programs and so forth. So I learned a lot, and that was great. We toured both Tuscola Middle School, Sterling Park Elementary, and I was able to go meet Mr. Guy at Lemon High School, where they received a check donation of $10,000 for their Young Men of Excellence program, which was a fabulous donation. The Altamont Police Department was there, many of those members, and we're very grateful to that. I would ask my board members, hearing that we're going to review the Code of Conduct and Policy in April, it was advised by Jill that if we could review them ourselves personally, and both the Policy 5136 and the Code of Conduct, and submit, not all, we have to do it one by one, to Jill. Jill, do you want him, or Amy Elwood? No, Jill does not want it. Don't take that back. To Amy Elway. Is that okay, Amy, with you? If we submit our areas of concern or question or recommendations for the Code of Conduct?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So if you could do that by March 24th, if you'll put a note on your calendars, please. And then I would just like to speak about the, just, go ahead, you go first.
Code of Conduct and what else?
The policy number 5136, the cell phone use
Okay.
with students, because they're, is that okay?
By the 24th?
Okay.
Okay.
By March 24th. Okay. So about the work session, it was not my intent ever to have you feel like your input was not valued. I had asked the board clerk to send to send an email asking you to prioritize and be more specific with your topics. Our staff has had to work nights and weekends. This whole past weekend, I know multiple people, in order to prepare documents for FDOE and then also to prepare for our workshop. And I tried to pick older items. For example, Allie's Hope had been on there, I think, a year. I think the update from Allie's Hope. And we worked together as best we could. I'm not trying to be defensive. It is our workshop, and it is important that we have time to talk. I also feel like we need to give more specificity, I can never say that word, to Jill with the topics that we want. There were several disciplines. That encompasses so much, and we're going to be talking about our code of conduct. And are you talking about staff discipline or student discipline, or just give us a little more so they know what the focus is? If you could do that, I'm asking, just to give them a break. They are overextended, and we can't get to spring break fast enough. So accept my apologies. I tried my best today. Okay. And now we'll move on along. It is now time for public comments and agenda items. And I have, I think, 3. Yes, would you mind reading, Vice Chair?
Policy 0169.1, public participation at board meetings. The purpose of public participation segments of the board meeting is to allow the public to address matters within the board's jurisdiction and not to resolve individual grievances or disputes. Public comments related to education, the board agenda, and the district are welcome and encouraged, but public comment segments are not forums to engage in personal attacks against school system employees or board members. To maintain orderly conduct, the public comment segments of the meetings may not be used as open forums to discuss matters unrelated to education, to support or oppose candidates for public office, including presentations of political and/or campaign issues, announcing any candidacy or campaigning, or to engage in commercial speech, attempting to sell our product to the board or to the public. Nor are they forums to address matters involving disciplinary actions of any kind, pending claims, complaints, or litigation against the district or district personnel. Public comment durations are as follows. Agenda items limited to 3 minutes. 1 group representative speaking on is maximum of 6 minutes. Excuse me. Speaker must remain on topic item on each item. Non-agenda items are limited to 2 minutes. Speakers shall direct their comments only to the board and may not address the audience or other speakers. No speaker may yield his or her time to any other person. Generally, substitutions of speakers are not allowed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have 3 agenda item speakers. Judy, if you'd like to come forward, Nina Sandberg, and Ashley Pittman.
Good evening, excuse me. Good evening, Superintendent and school board members. My name is Judy Ying, and I am a teacher at Lake Howell High School, and I am the Vice President of the Seminole Education Association. I'm very glad to see that the agenda item that is approving money for a school board member to go to Tallahassee next week. I will also be there next week with members of the Teachers Union. We need all hands on deck right now to save public education. The Florida legislature and governor are continuing their plan to dismantle public education. It began 23 years ago when vouchers were first introduced and has continued to grow like a cancer. HB 1 is the latest public school eating bill. They want to allocate somewhere between $200,000 and $4 billion for these private vouchers. They're saying this money will come from the lottery. As you know, the lottery money is to be used for public education. However, those dollars were supposed to supplement the education budget. Instead, they replaced it dollar for dollar. Now that money won't be available for public schools. Without money, we do not get paid. We do not get health care. Our classrooms don't have air conditioning or heat. The insects and rodents start taking up residence because our rooms and campuses cannot get clean, and mold grows. There are not computers, lab supplies, or books. In other words, everything a student needs to be successful has to be paid for. Some of our schools are already experiencing these issues. The voucher lovers won't stop after this year. They will continue to put more and more of our tax dollars into private schools. These schools have no accountability to the public. There'll be no school board with private schools either. That means schools will not be held accountable to the parents and the community where these schools are. Our elected officials in Tallahassee say they want to give parents a choice. Well, if public education ends, that choice ends with it. The private schools will decide who gets to be in their classrooms. Where will those students with mental illness, cognitive difficulties, abuse, poverty, or language barriers who make Johnny and Susie uncomfortable in the classroom go when they're no longer welcome? Right now, they return to the public schools. 61% of students using vouchers for public schools return to the public schools, for private schools. But often the money does not go with them. If kids don't have schools to attend, they cannot be educated. Are we heading backwards toward an uneducated society? There is a myriad of bills targeting public education this session. And if a bill has the intent of busting the teachers' union, it is again aimed at our public schools. 50% of our teachers willingly join the union and have comfort knowing that there is a group looking out for their best interests. It makes sense that if we are supported, then we can be the very best teachers possible for our students. So these bills, too, weaken public education. I hope this trip next week for School Board Member Sanchez is not the last of this legislative session. I hope that you all can go up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Order, please. Next speaker.
Nina Sandberg.
I'm Nina Sandberg. A gentleman came to the last school board meeting to ask SCPS to make the Kennedy Space Center one of its major field trip destinations. This is an excellent idea, and my son would love to go to the Kennedy Space Center with his classmates at Oviedo High School. The Space Center is an excellent field trip for middle and high school students. The Space Center has a variety of excellent field trip programs. When I was in college, one of my UCF professors took our entire class of college students to the Kennedy Space Center for the same type of field trip that they would be giving my son or daughter. It was awesome. We were each given a tile from one of the launch pads as a memento. The Space Center is closer than St. Augustine and cheaper than SeaWorld. You cannot argue with its academic relevance. My children have never been offered a Kennedy Space Center field trip from SCPS ever. SCPS does not appear to be taking advantage of being so close to the nation's Space Center. Please add Kennedy Space Center to the regular annual field trips for both middle and high school students. Also, please schedule a field trip for my own middle and high school students before the end of this year. They have not been on any field trips for 3 years now. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sandberg. And Ashley
Order,
Pittman.
please. Next speaker.
The paperwork goes with the green one. Is that okay? Hi. Hi. My name is Ashley Pittman. I'm a teacher at Redbug Elementary. As teachers are flying out of the profession, it kind of makes you stop and think and reflect, like, should I go too? Why am I still here? Am I doing the right thing, or am I just crazy? And as I was reflecting, something I came across was my philosophy on education written back at my senior year in college. And in it, I stated that every student deserves the opportunity, or every student can learn and deserves a excellent learning environment to do so. Unfortunately, right now in Seminole County, our students are not getting an excellent learning environment. We do have grade A schools, which are great, but with our discipline that we're having issues with in our schools, it's really bringing down the classroom environment for everybody. The student that is being sent out of the room regularly because they're not getting consequences and then they just return to do the same thing over and over again, they're not getting the best learning environment that they need to succeed. And when the student returns to the classroom,
our other students that are there following their directions are now having to endure rude comments, aggravation from another student, bullying, that kind of stuff that just doesn't end. And they're there trying their hardest to just get through the day. So it really breaks my heart when the system is failing both ends of the spectrum. The student that needs that discipline and that structure is not getting it. And then our kids that need a safe learning environment to thrive, they're not getting it either. I've had multiple parents in my classroom in tears because they're frustrated. And not even just frustrated for their own child, but frustrated for other children. Just like Judy mentioned, the legislature is going towards vouchers. If we can't get our discipline under control, teachers are leaving. Parents are going to be taking their kids out of Seminole County in waves. It's a huge concern. I wish I had a perfect answer for it. I don't. But I would love an opportunity to discuss possibilities or to talk about some things that we're seeing in the classroom. It needs to change, and it's frustrating. But that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ashley.
Order, please.
So we're up to the consent agenda. Superintendent, do you have a recommendation?
Yes, the consent agenda be approved as presented.
Motion.
Is there a second? Okay. That was Autumn, second. Is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? Okay, motion passes. No unfinished, no new business. Okay, it's now time for committee updates, I believe. Did we miss?
The student discipline hearing
Oh, I'm
dispositions.
sorry. Do you have a motion, Superintendent, recommendation?
Yes, I do, and that is that the School Board of Seminole County approve the student disciplinary recommendations from February 13, 2023.
I motion.
Second.
Did you get that? Okay, is there any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes. Okay, now we're on board.
For the superintendent's report, it is included in the book, and it's read-only. I did want to, again, echo the sentiments shared by many of you and thank Ms. Faison and Dr. Cummings for the summit that happened here. I'm really excited about the work that has begun and was really it was a great day. Would also like to say thank you to the Altamont Springs Police Department for the donation for the Young Men of Excellence at Lyman, and want to give a shout out and a thank you to Principal Schuler over at Tuscaloosa Middle School, hosted both the chair and myself for our student forum that happened last week. It was really good to hear directly from the students about a number of topics that are of interest to them, and then also to hear their responses to some of our questions. So again, the remainder of the report is in the book, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Okay, Member Pennick.
I had no committee meetings. My audit committee is this Friday. That's all.
Thank you. Member Davis, any committee?
Also, my children's cabinet meeting is tomorrow, and we don't have the health department meeting yet.
Okay.
So.
Okay, thank you.
Good.
Thank you very much. Member Garrick.
I had the opportunity to attend the Sanford Commissioner 2 community meeting at the Thelma Williams Center just before, it was just before the District 5 cluster meeting, which I had to duck out in order to go see the Black History presentation at Millennium High School. But it again, is a wonderful collaborative committee. We've got the sheriff that regularly attends, as well as the health department, many members from the community. And so I would urge anybody that wants to know what's happening in the county-wide to stop by the the Sanford Commissioner District 2 meeting, which takes place once a month in the Velman Williams Center. I also had the opportunity to sit in on the Business Advisory Board meeting. They had a special presentation by Sergeant Kyle Worthington about safety and security. They were incredibly impressed. They did not realize that we are a model for safety and security, not just in Florida, but nationwide. So again, as member or as Vice Chair Sanchez mentioned, she is heading to Tallahassee, but there are some bills that talk about school safety. And so I urge you to look at those and look at what we're doing here in Seminole County. We want to make sure that we are empowered to continue on our trajectory for keeping our kids safe. Also, our Business Advisory Board is going to be helping guide us through some recruiting and hiring best strategies from the private world. So yeah, the private-public partnerships are of great value to us. Finally, I'd just like to say it is Women's History Month again. I am my grandmother had 2 daughters. My mother had 4 daughters. I have 3 daughters, and I am incredibly proud to be sitting up here with a panel of 5 elected officials and 3 very dedicated professionals, and I'm especially proud to have the first female superintendent in Seminole County leading us during these times. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Vice Chair Sanchez.
So I'll have my final VAB board meeting, I think it's next week. That's the Value Adjustment Board. So we will finish off the tax for the 2022 year. And then Brews Around the Zoo is coming up. That is April 8th. You can purchase tickets online for that. Also check out their summer camps, as well as, I'm sure their spring break camp is already filled up, but check out the summer programs that they have for that. And Allie's Hope Golf Tournament is coming up shortly as well. That is, March 8th? Not March 8th, March 21st, from 8 until 1 at Heathrow. You can always use auction items, and a lot of the money they do end up giving back to us in so many different ways and trying to implement so many of these wonderful programs into our schools. So appreciate your support in that. With Coalition, we canceled our spring break, the meeting for Monday because of spring break, but we are still looking into discussing further within the districts of discipline and what each county is doing about discipline consequences, cell phone usage, and any other concerns that we see that are upticking throughout the whole nation, as well as recruiting teachers and keeping teachers. And then on the zoo board, I also sit on the governmental affairs board. And in that role, what we're trying to do is bring in more of elected, as well as soil and water, or anybody not just in Seminole County that sit on the board, but to get any other areas such as Volusia County and Lake County and Orange County, all those other counties, to have a vested interest and reach out to them for partnerships as well. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I had the foundation board meeting. Just parents, be aware they have scholarships available. The senior scholarship deadline is March 21st. And they too are planning a golf outing. Our Golf for Education is April 3rd. I think tea time is 9. They want you to get there about 8 for breakfast. And those are the only committees that I had at this time. It's now time for public comment, non-agenda items. And I'll call the first 3 names: Nina Sandberg, Robin Dellinger, Ashley Pittman.
I'm Nina Sandberg. The board needs to change non-agenda public comment time back to 3 minutes. We have overcorrection in school discipline just like we have overcorrection in law enforcement. The school board and superintendent need to normalize the SCPS discipline code, discipline procedures, and discipline practices. You can never go back to the extremely abusive, fascist, Gestapo, no-tolerance discipline that was happening under Dr. Griffin's management. But teachers, parents, and students need for you to go back to normal discipline. You need to completely review the discipline code, discipline procedures, and discipline practices before next year, and you need to fix this broken system. The SCPS discipline code should be written in a very clear, concise, and simple manner so that a 12-year-old can understand it. Right now, even the teachers do not understand it. It needs to be written in plain speak and not lawyerese. There need to be actual consequences for bad behavior, such as silent lunch, timeout, walking laps during recess, lunch detention, after-school detention, and in-school suspension. You need to bring back old-fashioned strategies that actually work, such as the color-coded behavior chart, motivation charts like the snake race, weekly behavior contracts, pizza parties with the principal, citizenship awards, mentoring by guidance counselors, a new DARE-style curriculum. DARE-style instruction really works. Teachers and administrators need to receive annual in-service training and in positive reinforcement, self-esteem building, bullying, classroom management, and classroom discipline. Get the kids off the screens and give them fun and engaging learning activities that make them want to go to school and make them want to participate. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sandberg. Robin Dellinger, followed by Ashley Pittman, followed by Marjorie Murray, please.
Good evening, board members and Ms. Beeman. I'm going to hit again a topic you've already heard about tonight, but maybe from a different viewpoint. I'd like to share my concerns regarding the proposed legislation, Senate Bill 202 and House Bill 1, to create a universal voucher program in Florida. The primary narrative used to support this legislation is that parents do not have choice options for their child's education. I know you all know this, but I think a lot of parents, based on my experience, don't always know it. And I don't know that people in the community always know. That's from what I learned when I was working for the district. Seminole County is a choice district and has been recognized as such by DOE for many years. For example, your child can go to their zone school, or they can go to one of 15 magnet schools with transportation provided because you made sure that that happens. They can participate at the high school level in 51 career and professional education academies at our 9 high schools. We have 6 charter schools, which are also public schools. We have multiple transfer options, including controlled open enrollment, which allows kids from outside our district to come to Seminole County Public Schools, and that is mandated by Florida statute. So I think we have a lot of choice. According to the Florida Policy Institute, the estimated cost in the first year of implementation of this voucher program could be as much as $4 billion. Imagine, that's 1 year. Imagine what an additional $4 billion and more could do to improve public schools across the state of Florida, in terms of facilities, in terms of programs, and teacher salaries. I would encourage parents and community members to stay informed and to advocate for our A-rated public schools. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Dellinger. Ashley Pittman, followed by Marjorie Murray, followed by Thomas Burgos.
Hi again. So many things, so little time. What I wanted to talk about in this moment is curriculum from one of your teachers' perspectives, and a mother who has a 4.5-year-old that's going to be coming into Seminole County, hopefully next year. One thing that I noticed when I really started sitting down and trying to figure out where my son was going to go was that the amount of tests we take is through the roof. And I know that we got rid of high-stakes testing with the FSA, but if you look at the numbers, my kids in 3rd grade do the reading fast 3 times, They do iReady progress monitoring 3 times, so that's 6 tests right there throughout the year. And then in math, they also do the math fast 2 times for 3rd grade, but other classes 3 times. And they do the iReady diagnostic for 3 times in math. So right there, we have about 12 tests, not including our unit tests that we give. So if we're talking about moving to another system for progress monitoring, that's kind of what our unit tests do. Our unit tests are meant for us to monitor our students' progress. And as the professionals in the classroom, the trained educators in the classroom, it feels like we're not trusted to know how our kids are doing and where they're going. And to do an iReady diagnostic and a FAST test at the same time, like back to back, iReady right before Christmas, FAST when we come back right after. It seems very redundant, and we're testing a lot. So even though we have done away with the high stakes testing of FAST, my poor sweet babies are getting such anxiety, and they know 3rd grade is such an important year. And one last thing I wanted to ask, and I don't know if I can ask these questions. Does anybody know the required iReady score for 3rd grade? I know we've been asking about it and we haven't gotten any news on it. And so that's really concerning as we go towards the end of the year.
Time has expired.
Thank you so much. I appreciate your guys' time so much. Yes.
Superintendent will be in touch with you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate you guys.
Thank you.
Marjorie Murray, Witter Springs. Thank you, Member Sanchez, for encouraging everyone to be aware of the bills in the legislative session that opened in Tallahassee today. Public schools could lose up to $4 billion next year with the proposed expansion of the voucher program to private schools. This is a travesty. Private schools can be selective in who they admit, require academic admission exams, refuse to enroll students who are disabled or not proficient in English or who had been in trouble in school. However, public schools welcome all students, regardless of a disability, academic or language proficiency, or behavior. The legislature should use those funds to raise your teachers' salaries to the level that recognizes their worth and closes the disparity caused by the state-mandated beginning teacher salary. Instead, they send them to private schools, many of whom hire teachers without a college degree, much less a teaching certificate. Public schools are micromanaged in every way by the state, but the private schools receiving public dollars in the forms of vouchers are not managed by the state at all. Zero oversight. The governor says over and over, education, not indoctrination. His rationale for micromanaging your curriculum and banning your books. Yet almost $4 billion go to private schools, many of whom indoctrinate, whether it is religion or an ideology, and their books are not banned. This is what dismantling public education looks like. Create chaos, drain resources from the public schools by sending money to private schools, and then try to convince everyone how awful public schools are by advertising an A to F grade for every public school while not holding private schools accountable at all. It makes me very angry, and I hope you, teachers, parents, and administrators are angry
your
too.
time has
We need
expired.
to work together to save our public schools.
Thank you.
Order, please.
Thomas Burgess, Jessica Tillman, and Raquel Molina, please. Hi.
Good evening, school board, Superintendent Beeman. My name is Thomas Joe Bugas II, and I'm a 17-year veteran here at Seminole County. I've taught my entire career here. It is a second career for me. I want to first talk about the discipline or the information I said last time I spoke here was about how we have these programs to help our students. But first, I want to commend you for having a teacher sit on your math progression. But I think you really missed the point. When you talk about math progression, you need to talk about class size with that progression. Because it's very different to teach a class of 30 students that want to be in that progression, that want to be in advanced math, and they really understand it and are getting the information. And when they struggle, they have the attention of the teacher, but not all of them need that because they have those skills. You put 4 or 5 students in there that have no desire to be in that class, that are disruptive, that have every opportunity to make sure that everyone else in the class is disrupted, and you have ruined the class for all 30 students. And this is where we stand right now in our public schools in Seminole County. We have class size amendments that we passed in the state, but we're not honoring those. We are also not following through with our discipline programs that we have. Those students that are acting out need to be addressed. They need maybe to be in smaller classes where their antics will not be disruptive to the others that want to learn in the classroom. We have social, emotional, behavioral classes to help these students that cannot behave publicly or in the classroom when they're disruptive. But we don't put them there. We don't honor them. We no longer use referrals to give them the guidance counselor support that they need, where they could actually go down and talk to a counselor. Why is it they're acting out? Why, if they're in an advanced placement math class, they aren't focusing? What is the purpose? What is the reason that they don't want to do this? And if it's they don't want to be in that math class, why can we not ask them to move down to the standard? Or why can they not ask themselves to be moved to the standard? We have an issue here, and we can solve it. We are more than capable, but we are not following through with our discipline and programs.
Sir, your time
Thank
has
you. Have a good
expired.
evening.
Thank you. Order, please.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Tillman. I'm a Seminole County resident. Today at the workshop, a board member brought up concerns that many of us have voiced concerns about, including tonight. Wanting to keep confidential who spoke up, the superintendent refused to take action again. The superintendent reports to the board and is the secretary to the board. It is very gaslighting to refuse to investigate discipline issues because people don't want to come forward due to fear of retaliation. We have had teachers, parents, people representing other parents stand up at this podium stating these issues are occurring. Teachers do not have access to referrals, and the pre-conversations need to stop. It is the superintendent's job to investigate these issues. Many, many people have said these issues are happening. Do your job, figure out where these things are happening, because it is district-wide. It's not one-offs. You say it's not the desire of the district's office to have low discipline numbers, so where's the disconnect? Why are schools allowed to do this, and why is the superintendent refusing to address it? I would like to say I'm glad no discipline was added to the referrals. It needs to be utilized honestly. It would also be beneficial to add a comment section to the referrals as to why the course of action was taken. We have been asking for transparency for months. It would be great if the district would post the recordings of the workshops instead of making us do public records requests each meeting. It takes 3+ weeks to receive a recording, and that's only after I ask again. Then I'm given the minutes, not the recording, and then I have to request again. You should also give 3 minutes for non-agenda items. Denying 1/3 of our speaking time makes it appear you don't care about what the community is concerned with. Just because it's not on your agenda doesn't mean it's not just as important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Order, please.
Raquel, welcome.
Good evening. I'm Raquel Molina. I urge all board members and superintendent to seriously review their job descriptions and place the well-being of all children above your own political agenda. I know it's easier to ignore complaints until they go away, but people eventually run out of patience. Don't let this ongoing culture of tolerance in Seminole County Public School to result in yet another case of suicide or school shooting. Research shows that many kids are bullied and not protected are at risk of committing suicide. We all know that. Denied and bullying issues, not taking action, or not responding to serious ongoing concerns can be a costly error, and those costly errors are paid by taxpayers, like all of us. Please stop wasting taxpayers' money. My grandkids and all students in Seminole County Public School deserves to be in a safe learning environment. It was denied. The safe learning environment was denied to my daughter, Emily Potts, a special education student, her first year in Lyman High School that he was the principal. It was denied. She wasn't kept safe. Rather than working in good faith to address and resolve the issues, the district retaliated and made me feel like a bad parent. Stop bullying and wasting taxpayers' money. Please stop. Fix the broken system, because it's in bad shape. And it's not A-rated anymore.
Your time
Ms.
has
Autumn.
expired.
It's not.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Molina. Okay, that's all of the public comments that I have at this time. Board, do you have any last-minute items to address? No? Okay,
I do want to make one announcement. FHSAA just announced that Lake Mary High School won Spirited High School of the Year. A press release was just announced, so kudos to all the Rams and students for having the most spirited student section.
That's excellent. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Sending my best to the staff members. Please take time, if you're able to, for relaxing. Yeah, it's 3 days. We can see the light coming. Enjoy your break and your families, and thank you every day for what you do. Have a good evening. This meeting's adjourned.